Hello trumpet players, hello jazz players. So I'm going to do something different. I don't have time over the next 6 weeks to do the kind of videos that I've been doing, and I just want to put some quick videos out, which I'm kind of ruining that already by telling you that, but this is the first one. So I want to talk to you about, in this video, the way that I approach teaching how to play changes. Now this is for jazz improvisation, and playing changes is one of the more important things about what we do. And before I even get into that, I know there's some people who have accused me of not playing the changes, and that's not that's because there's stuff that I do that is supposed to sound like that. And so yes, you can say, oh well, you don't play the changes, right? But anyway, and I don't do that stuff on a commercial jazz gig, right? So like if I'm playing at a wedding or something, you're not going to hear me do that stuff. I know how to, that's one of the goals I had when I first started getting deep into jazz improv, right? I wanted to have enough control on my chromaticism, so that when I needed more chromaticism, I could boost that up a little bit. When I needed less chromaticism, I could bring that down. And that's really helped me a whole bunch over the years for making money, right? Because, you have to be appropriate for the gig. Anyway, so as a teacher, the way I teach how to play the changes is not the way traditional jazz education teaches that stuff. And I was thinking this morning, when I was thinking about this video, this topic, the reason I don't do the old-fashioned way is because muscle memory matters. I don't normally do those, I forgot what they're called, when there's all three words start with this same letter. It just came out that way. Muscle memory matters. And the problem with the old-fashioned way of teaching how to play the changes, how to learn the changes, is that the muscle memory that you get from it translates into extremely unmusical phrases. So we don't do that. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it as a mental exercise off of your horn. So if you have, we do the roots and the thirds, the roots and thirds and the fifths, and stuff like that. As a mental exercise, I don't see a problem with going like for the blues in C, F, C, F, right? Like that. And then the next time, but saying it like I'm saying it now. C, E, F, A. Saying that, I think, is okay. We just don't want muscle memory that follows that pattern, because that muscle memory is inherently unmusical. What you get, and see, muscle memory comes from what you practice. So we don't do, in my lessons, we don't do that stuff. The way we get to where you're playing the changes is really through the so-called back door. Number one, and you hear me say this all the time, number one is to be doing your listening. You need to be listening more than you're practicing. And in the case of jazz improv, you need to be listening to people improvising. Number two, You need to practice arpeggios for all of the chords. Now, I don't do extensions when I do the arpeggios, right? Because to me, extensions are more like polychords, the way I treat them. And so when you're my student, you would be doing arpeggios over I even have a sheet, a checklist. You need to do every single one arpeggio a day. That's all it takes. You don't have to do tons of arpeggios. One arpeggio a day, but you're going to go through all of them. All the standard arpeggios, including the sus chords. Right? So, and while you're doing the arpeggios, this is an important part of it, because when we talk about playing the changes, there's two aspects of playing the changes. One is that you have to be able to read the changes. But we also want to be able to play the changes by ear too. Okay? But being able to look at the chord symbols and improvise something over that. So you're not going to ever do that if you're never looking at the chord symbols. So while you're doing the arpeggios, you're supposed to be staring at the chord symbol. That right there is huge. That's something different from what a lot of people teach. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is we do, now I didn't invent this, but the system that I use is, I think, unique from what I've heard other people do. We do tendency tone exercises. I call them tendency tone etudes, and now I'm at a point where I have a system of these, and it's best to memorize them. What the tendency tone etudes do is it gives you that horizontal flow through the chords. And it's more for ear training than it is for technique. There is a technical aspect to it. It's like I tell you with all this other stuff too. The ear training takes longer to develop than the technique. So if you focus on the ear training, the technique will come, because it takes more time and effort to do the ear training. So, but it's the same exercises, the same material that you're doing as you would do for the technique. So the emphasis really should be on the ear training. So that's the third thing. We do tendency tone exercises. Then we use what I call, and this is my first time saying this in public because it's kind of sort of new as in last few years. I haven't said this on any videos. I haven't written it in any books. It's only stuff that I cover with my students. I teach what I call forced motif etudes. And I think this is one of the best ways to learn how to play the changes. You take a motif, and you got to do this in writing. Don't try to do it, maybe as an advanced thing you can try later to do it by ear. Take a motif, write it into the changes every place, and in every key that it's appropriate on those changes. Then fill in the blanks between and make it sound like a decent piece of music. That's called a forced motif etude. I've been writing forced motif etudes and using them myself since the early 90s. They are awesome. They're awesome. Now, it's best for you to do your own forced motif, and if you don't know what a motif is, I have a video about jazz motifs. Okay, so that's oh, here's another thing that we do. So I think we're on number 4. Let's talk about number 5. And this should actually come before. I kind of dropped it, forgot about it. What I do is I write the changes out in pencil. A number of times. It depends on how advanced you are. I do them 10 times. I'll staple scrap paper. 10 pieces of scrap paper. Why 10 pieces? Because the other side has stuff on that I have to throw away. 10 pieces of scrap paper. I write the changes out on the scrap paper. Flip the page, write it out again by memory. No cheating. Write out the changes. Flip it over, write out the changes. Flip it over, write out the changes. Flip it over. So that would be number 5. Really, number 4, I got them mixed up. Then one more thing that we do to help you learn the changes is to do what I call a wish list etude. Now, I'm actually very much opposed to etudes. That's funny because that's how most people know me, right? It's through the etudes that I've written for the Allstate stuff and stuff like that. It's different when it's your own etude. So I see composition as slow motion improvisation and improvisation as spontaneous composition. When you write a jazz etude, you're basically writing something that would be like an improvisation, right? It sounds like an improvisation. If it doesn't sound like an improvisation, then you're doing something wrong. So we talked about forced motif etudes. This time we're talking about wish list etudes. A wish list etude is when you write something in a way that's how you would like to play if you could. See, the wish list. Okay? You write out what you wish you could improvise. And, with all of these things that I'm telling you, with the exception of, I would say, the first 2. All of these things, no, not the first, because the listening was the first one. The tendency tone and arpeggios, with the exception of those 2, all of this stuff is you. You're coming up with your own material. You're coming up with your own stuff to practice. It's not something you're going to buy in a book. That's why I don't have a book about this stuff yet, because it's not just a thing of, here, let me write these etudes for you. No, that is a waste of time. Practicing someone else's etude. Okay? What you should be practicing is the etudes you write. And the reason you're writing them is because you like them. And this is something you want to be able to do spontaneously. So after you've written the etudes, you should practice them, memorize them, be able to play them over the changes. Now, if you wrote something that you can't play, I mean in terms of technique, right? Don't be doing that. That's not what we mean by wish list, okay? We're talking about note choices and language and stuff like that. The licks you wish you could play and stuff like that. But don't be writing stuff that's too fast. Don't be writing stuff that's too awkward. You know what I mean? That's not what we mean by wish list etude. Anyway, so I want to keep this under 15 minutes, so I hope this has helped you. This is my approach. I've given you a complete summary of my approach of how we teach and how I practice playing the changes. And it works. It works a lot better than the other traditional way of doing it. All right, so that's it. God bless you guys. We'll see you on the next video.